Press the bell icon on the YouTube app to never miss a video from News Laundry.
Welcome to News Laundry Chhota Hafta. For the full episode, subscribe because it is behind the paywall and only subscribers get access to uncut, complete content. News Laundry Hafta is our weekly wrap of all that made the news, all that didn't, and all that should have and all that shouldn't have. We agree, we disagree, we critique, and occasionally we beat each other up. But it's all good fun. Subscribe.
This is a News Laundry podcast and you're listening to NL Hafta.
अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते हैं. आई एम गोना बी योर होस्ट दिस वीक बिकॉज अभिनंदन इज गॉन फॉर अ शॉर्ट ट्रिप टू अमृतसर. आई बिलीव वेर इज हैविंग dosa with chutney for some reason. At least that's what his tweet suggests.
And we've been speculating on his purpose.
He told me he's going to have kulcha. we discussed that and he was supposed to have.
Well, he's tweeted that the chutney with the dosa.
He's going to have everything. One doesn't cancel out the other.
Has he gone there to eat kulchas?
No, he did tell me that he's going to have chole kulche and then he's going to come back.
Okay.
He's going to for darshan and after darshan he'll have chole kulche.
But I thought he's an atheist.
Clearly he's not.
He said he's going to matha taken.
We need to check.
Maybe he's going to thank.
Yes.
Then maybe he should go to Tirupati and shave his head and make them richer.
I'm just going to quickly introduce our lovely panel today. We have Madhu Trehan with us.
Hello.
Welcome, Madhu. Really good to have you. We have Mehraj.
Hello.
Who we introduced last week. So if you want his introduction, then listen to that again.
Yeah, please do.
But he's the latest member on the News Laundry team.
And it's behind a paywall, so you'll have to subscribe first if you haven't already.
If you want to know who Mehraj is, subscribe. And of course, Raman sir. Welcome,
Hello.
Raman sir. And we have a really special guest with us, Kumar Sambhav Shrivastava, who's a journalist. He's been a journalist for about a decade. He is contributing editor with Business Standard, and recently a tweet thread of his made quite a bit of news and was even noticed by the powers that be in the top court. Hi, Kumar.
Hi.
Welcome, a big welcome to you. And before we get into a discussion, and we have a lot of stuff to ask Sambhav, we'll quickly go over the headlines. So, the Ayodhya case, the last hearing happened on Wednesday. It was quite high drama. Pages were torn. It was reported all over the news media, so we should discuss a bit of that. The petitioners from the Muslim side have asked the Supreme Court to restore the Babri Mosque. They said that they own the land. CJ Ranjan Gogoi was pretty upset through the hearing, and we can discuss a bit of whatever the courtroom drama was, but he basically started off saying enough is enough and we need to finish the hearing. The side representing the Hindus presented some evidence from this book which was torn. That was reported, that went a bit viral. Meanwhile, the Sunni board lawyer has said that the Ayodhya panel's plan is a win-win for Hindus and Muslims. And already we are seeing a lot of reporters landing in Ayodhya. And there's also Section 144 being imposed in Ayodhya, right? Kashmir continues to stay in news. There were full-page ads in newspapers, actually, in J&K, where the government basically spoke about how you should not succumb to militant threats and you should resume normal life. That must be the first government ads in a Kashmiri newspaper in a very long time.
Yeah, because they aren't giving them ads
stopped giving them ads,
yeah.
Postpaid mobile services were restored after 72 days. There was a lot of jubilation. You could see a lot of anchors calling up the reporters in Kashmir and saying, call lag gaya. That was being reported. But now, Mehraj, have you made calls back home? Is it all working?
Yes. So the connectivity is much better, but internet and prepaid is still off.
Okay.
So what news are you getting from Kashmir now? Is it normalizing or not?
No, it's the same as it is. Government is trying to normalize, so they have announced examinations for schools later this month.
Yeah, all kids are being asked to come back within a month, I think, to give the exams or something like
so
that.
So it starts on 29th of October, the exams start, so it will go on for about a month or so.
Okay.
But there seems to be like civil disobedience going on.
It is.
And people are not opening their shops, not doing business, not using public transport. So how will they resolve this? It means like who's going to blink first?
I don't think that they really care about it. They just want to project an perception of normalcy. That's why the exams are happening. So you have schools shut for 3 months. Nobody has studied anything, but now you have to have exams. And the kids they don't have a choice. If they don't, they lose a year.
And the government is working more for an image for the outside Kashmir, people living outside Kashmir, not for people living in Kashmir.
In fact, the whole decision, I think, was for the people outside Kashmir rather than for
So that's the image the government is trying to create.
We also had a bunch of interviews that Amit Shah gave to 5 channels, so we can discuss that too. There's of course Haryana and Maharashtra elections that we can get into a bit. We've started getting our first batch of ground reports. In fact, we published one today from Haryana. Big news for India, Abhijit Banerjee, and I will not say his wife, and Esther Duflo. They won the Nobel Prize for Economics along with Michael Kremer. This was big news celebrated by everyone in India. Everyone was jubilant. Bengalis especially.
Not everyone.
Not everyone.
Yeah.
Some people were upset because he's a bit of a critic of the current government. Before we begin our discussion for the week, I would like to remind you, as always, pay to keep news free. Log on to newslaundry.com/subscription and support us. We need your help. We need you to come in and step up more than ever. And do it, otherwise Abhinandan will call you Mufatkhor. Also, rate our podcasts on whatever platform you're listening on. Ratings do matter. And we'd love for you guys to give us your honest feedback. But hopefully most of that feedback would be positive and glowing and in 5 stars. Also, one very important thing, if you like our podcast, please recommend them to people. You do know that for Hafta, the latest 3 ones are behind the paywall, and we always put up a short snippet called Chhota Hafta. So you can forward Chhota Hafta to your friends and get them hooked and just give them a snippet of what the podcast is like and urge them to listen to or subscribe to us and listen to Hafta, or you can send them some of our previous episodes that are outside the paywall. Just give them a flavor of what our discussions are like and urge them again to subscribe to us. So let's just jump right in. I'll get Kumar. I should call you Sambhav, right? Kumar is just your like Kumari, Kumar.
You can call Sambhav. That's better.
Okay, yes, of course. So Sambhav, you did the tweet early this week.
Yeah.
Where you spoke about a very complicated case with a lot of subplots and a lot of heroes and twists and turns. So, and that got noticed by Supreme Court Judge Arun Mishra. I think he was referring to your, though he didn't specify, but it seemed like he was referring to your tweet thread. And he spoke about how he was being maligned on social media. So just tell us a bit about the story that you've been covering for a while now on land acquisition and what you were telling people in that thread.
Right. I reported this story with my colleague Nitin Sethi. This was reported in Business Standard in April 2019. And the story was about how one very important provision of the land acquisition law, which was enacted in 2013, was stuck in the Supreme Court for the past 5 years. So and I'll come back to the story, what it is. But the interesting thing is that these stories, when you report on facts and you've done some work on this, they are relevant all the time, and you never know when they become that big.
Yeah.
So this is how it happened, and you probably, I would also like to believe that the judges were mentioning, they were referring to this particular tweet, and it had some impact. So,
but basically it was about Supreme Court Judge Arun Mishra deciding on a bench, and this pertained to a case on reliance and land acquisition. So at least just tell us a bit about that case so that our viewers know what we're talking about.
So what happened is in 2013, the then UPA government brought a new land acquisition law, and it basically, going to the root of the matter, the earlier law of land acquisition was enacted in the colonial times, 1894, and that law was pretty draconian. It basically just forcefully let governments to acquire land from anybody, even for private parties or anyone, with meager compensation.
Yeah.
Now, all these things were corrected in the new law in 2013. There were 2-3 very important things, that if you're taking land for a private project or a public-private project, then you have to take consent of people. The compensation was increased by many folds. In urban areas, was increased by 2-fold. In rural areas, was increased by 4-fold. And then there was also rehabilitation and resettlement promise to people who lose land. These provisions were not in the older law. Now, after 2013, whenever land is taken for a new project, all these things will apply. But for people whose land was taken earlier, they obviously did not get benefit of these progressive provisions. So there was this very important provision in the new law which said that for the previous or the earlier projects where land was taken, but land has not been acquired for 5 years. Sorry, the possession of land has not been taken for 5 years by the developer, or the compensation has not been paid to farmers in their accounts, then they are eligible to get the benefits of the new law.
Okay.
Which means the acquisition under the previous law will lapse. So, and then the government will have to acquire all the land afresh under the new law. Now, there was a case in Gujarat, Jamnagar, where Reliance was building its SEZ, a petroleum SEZ, and they had initiated acquisition of land in 2005. There were obviously some farmers protested and the land acquisition got stuck. The company and the government could not take possession of some of the land, even though they deposited the compensation in the government treasury. People did not take the compensation in their account. They refused to take.
Okay.
So after this 2013 law came, these farmers filed a case in the Gujarat High Court seeking these benefits of the new law, that because the land acquisition was stuck, the land acquisition should lapse and we should get benefit of the new law.
And this case was against Reliance. So farmers
this case was against the Reliance SEZ. Okay. This was in Gujarat High Court. Yeah. While this case was going on, in several other high courts across the country, as well as in the Supreme Court, several farmers have got already orders and judgments in their favor using this particular provision of the law. This provision is Section 24 of the new law. So they got benefits across the courts. Judges were delivering orders in the benefit in the favor of farmers using this particular provision. Now, in 2014, government change. The new government realized that this could be very problematic, this particular provision. There could be several projects which were stuck. They might get again delayed further and sort of development gets stuck, the whole narrative that the government proposes against fair land acquisition. So they tried to amend the law, and this was happening while this case against the Reliance SEZ was already going on in High Court. The BJP government tried to amend this law and tried to struck down this provision, this to Section 24. They could not do it because of the opposition. There was strong opposition in the parliament, so they could not do it.
That was a big movement.
Now, what government could not do it, Reliance got it from the High Court in Gujarat. High Court agreed. What basically Reliance did, they just did not argue in the same case, but they filed a counter petition against the farmers' demand, saying this Section 24 should go. It should not be applied on private parties. Because private parties, as long as they have given the compensation to the government treasury, they are not responsible for whether the compensation is paid or not, or whether the possession of land has not taken. So High Court agreed against all the other interpretation of other high courts and Supreme Court. They agreed with Reliance and the farmers lost this case there. So they filed a petition in the Supreme Court against the High Court order.
And that petition is being heard by the same judge who favored Reliance.
That petition got listed before Justice Arun Mishra. While this petition, Justice Mishra was still hearing this petition, in another case related to the same provision, he gave a judgment saying that yes, these the provisions should not apply in certain cases where private party has already paid the compensation in government treasury. So this judgment would have in the Reliance case, it would have benefited to Reliance. But interestingly, Justice Mishra's this bench that he was heading, it was a 3-judge bench, and the judgment that this bench gave was in contradiction to another 3-judge bench in the Supreme Court. So this is a norm in the Supreme Court that if a bench of equal strength can't just override another judgment of a bench of equal strength.
Oh, okay.
If there is a contradiction, then the new bench has to basically refer it to the larger bench or the CJI for doing this. But Justice Arun Mishra did not refer this to another bench. He just overrode the judgment of another 3-judge bench in 2014, which was in the favor of farmers. So now this was a contradiction. Then another 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court noticed that this is what Justice Mishra's bench has done. So that bench stayed Justice Mishra's order and said that this can't be done. This needs to be referred to a
larger bench,
the CJI or larger bench. So then it came to CJI. He announced that a new 5-bench judge, a constitution bench, will be constituted, and that will decide the matter.
Okay.
Now the whole issue was pending for 1.5 years. Finally, last week, the constitution bench was formed, and interestingly, Justice Arun Mishra was made head of that bench as well. So that's when the whole...
I think this needs like a proper graphic storytelling, because there's so many characters and so much happening.
So basically, Justice Mishra is judging his own case right now.
Correct.
In a way.
So he would be leading... I mean, though people say that it's not just him deciding, there are 4 other judges, but obviously he would be leading the whole hearing to decide whether another judgment by a bench headed by him was valid or not. So that's what the whole contention was in the Supreme Court, and the matter got heard for 2 days. One of the lawyers from the farmer sides very aggressively argued that he can't be judging this case because he already had a predisposition on the matter. And that's when the whole controversy really became big.
Okay, so moving on to Ayodhya. So the court heard the last hearing was on Tuesday. Just to give you a little brief, it was a very dramatic hearing. What we know from what was being reported was that the Hindu Mahasabha wanted to present a few maps from a book called Ayodhya Revisited. This is a book that was written in 2016 by an IPS officer who was mediating between the two groups during the P.V. Narasimha Rao government. So they wanted to present these maps, and on the last day of the hearing, you basically can't produce new evidence. You're supposed to be just finishing your arguments. So Rajiv Dhawan, who's representing the Sunni Waqf Board, got a bit angry, and he said, no, you can't present it. And he shredded the maps, to which the CGI said, okay, you can shred them further. And then there was commotion in the thing. The CGI said, we'll walk out, if you don't present your side quickly, and we have to finish by 5 o'clock, and all that happened. And then it ended. I was very shocked, for one, to see how this was reported by a large section of the media. There were two. One was that television media, and especially the Times Now, I watched Times Now that day, and Republic and a few others also, they presented this a very usual practice of maybe shredding papers as a blasphemy against the Hindu religion. So you had anchors saying that Hindu religion has been violated in the Supreme Court and hamari astha ko phad diya type. So I think it was very inflammatory.
No, it's not just a map. Even the justice said that this is not relevant to us.
Yeah.
You can tear it off if you want.
Exactly.
And then he tore it off.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very routine thing. And And interestingly, this happened on the same day as the News Broadcasters Association's guidelines came out on reporting on Ayodhya, where they've said that you are not to inflame passions, you are not to speculate on the verdict, you are not to do debates where that can cause, people to get angry. So I'm very skeptical about it. Madhu, what do you think? Are we going to see some sane reporting? Also, they said one interesting thing that I wanted your opinion on, because you've covered it also, was they said that you should not show the demolition of the masjid on your TV.
First of all, the actual demolition, nobody has footage of the structure coming down. You have footage of people on top of the thing and knocking with hammers and other objects, but that was not the way it was brought down. That was all tamasha. The way it was brought down, it was discovered later, was that the whole place had been wired because such a heavy, big structure cannot come down with a few guys climbing up and knocking on it. That doesn't, obviously it's common sense that that's not how it came down. And then after investigations, it was discovered that the whole thing had been wired with explosives. And so that actual moment of the dust, like, when you see a building coming down, patak, and all the dust coming up, nobody has that footage. So anyone showing it...
what they mean maybe is then the image, that famous image of people climbing up and knocking it.
I was there.
Aaj Tak, India Today has used news track footage and done some extensive. Of course, they changed our voiceover and my voiceover, and they did their own thing, which is fine. It's their property; they're most welcome to it. But they showed pretty much everything that we had shown at that time. But the point is for them to say that you should not show the actual falling down of the is a bit precious. I think it's a little silly and delicate because it's not like Muslims will be seeing it for the first time coming down. The whole jo chot padi thi, lagi thi, us time, wo usi time lagi thi, and that chot has remained. So for them to say कि ये मत दिखाओ, it'll inflame, it's not really. I don't think it's realistic. And I'm not sure about the average Muslim is that committed on the Babri Masjid, and I'm not sure even the average Hindu is that committed on building a temple.
Really?
I think, I'm sure there's an emotional sort of support ke, Hindu banega, whatever, with after all, Narendra Modi was elected with a huge, massive majority. These are the majority people who do support something like this. I would expect that. But I think as you would know if you have covered major stories where emotions run high, the emotions run high in a small group of people in terms of the billions that we are. So the point is that not showing this or not showing that is not stopping rabid anchor persons screaming and yelling and all that. So I think that is far more inflammatory than showing one image.
Absolutely. And if you compare it to what's being said, the image is actually...
Image is immaterial. But if you're a Muslim listening to a guy who's shouting, Bolo, Bharat Mata ki jai, you're listening to a guy who's saying, tum log ye ho, wo ho, Pakistan wapis jao. This coloring of thinking, I think is anti-thinking actually. It's anti-emotion. So for me, thinking and emotion are two very important words for a human being to function in his life. If you're not thinking and if you're not using your emotion, these two things must be used. And emotion in this country is a bad word. Okay, wo to emotional ban raha hai. But you have to remember that a lot of things have moved in this country and others from emotion. We got rid of the British from emotion, not from practicalities. We emotionally felt they had to leave. It was less practical and more emotional. So Israel is built on emotion. What they feel for their country, most of their decisions. Yeah, they argue like us, they fight like us. It's a very argumentative culture like ours. But in the end, if you're killing these two things of not thinking through things and not using your emotion positively, I think that is detrimental. And this kind of yelling and screaming, which there seems to be no control, there seems to be no restraint, there seems to be no... and I know Arnab and people in Times Now... No, I won't go so far as Times Now, leave that out. I'm just talking about Arnab. I know Arnab is not stupid. He's not stupid. He's gone on a track which has become uncontrollable. I wouldn't say the same for Times Now.
But you have many Arnabs now.
I think they are stupid.
I agree that Times Now is stupid. I mean, Navika and Rahul in a way are stupid in the way that Arnab isn't.
And the way they argue and the way they say things, they just... I'm sorry, there is a lack of thinking there completely.
Which makes them more dangerous, you know?
Yeah, because
but each one of them is trying to ape Arnab.
Obviously, but the point is...
they're not able to do it. That's a different thing.
The point is that I've never believed in a product. A product can never work if it's a wannabe, if it's an also-ran. Your product has to be original. Every product that you are associated with should be original. Even your article that you write should be original. If you've heard a phrase that you've read before, or if you're putting in a phrase that you've read before, it should not be there. Every sentence should be invented, original. Even invent words, for God's sake. But this kind of aping is detrimental to the country.
Absolutely.
Where were you, sir, when the Allahabad High Court gave its decision?
Which
you
one?
remember?
Which
I
one?
was,
The Babri Masjid.
This only Ayodhya.
Acha, okay.
No,
Because I believe during that time also there
at
were
the
similar
time
advisories.
of the decision, I think I was with Hindustan Times.
Okay. Were you
I
covering
was-
it? Because you were also in
no,
Lucknow
I
for a while.
covered 1992.
Okay.
So when, as Madhu said, that these people just went over the top, and nobody has actually seen, how it was brought on, which is absolutely true, because there was a complete design. The moment these guys went to the top of the mosque, they started pelting stones on the media. So the media was immediately, they were, I think, RSS and VHP guys. So they just took us in a horde to the second floor of that building. I think it was Sita Rasoi or some building was there where we had a very, very clear view of the mosque.
Actually, you should
where
see
action was
the
happening.
news track tapes there on YouTube, on Ayodhya, which gives every single detail
Yes.
of every angle on all sides.
Yes.
I don't think there's a more comprehensive report
Yes.
than that. It even records a mutiny that took place at the time when the constables were being told to stop the destruction and they refused to go. So we don't know whether it was a planned thing that the guy will say, "Main bolunga, jao, roko, aur aap hilna nahi."
No, I personally feel it was planned because the way the things happen.
I personally think so, but we can't prove it.
Also, there was no attack on us, but the moment they went to the top, within 15 minutes they started attacking us. So we were all sent to the second floor.
So Advani,
and even they were.
Advani was having.
Advani was sitting with all.
no,
the
but him saying that none of this was planned, and I'm shocked. So that's a lie. you'd say.
You have to know this then.
No.
Advani actually thought that there was in school, in NCC camps, boys were given these sort of fake guns and you were made to march like 20 miles, 30 miles, and then the NCC the captains, the ones who were running the camp, knew that the boys would be frustrated that walking for 20 miles and not having anything to do with their guns afterward. They used to have a wall over there where people used to just jam them and feel good that we poked it and we jammed it, and they used to shove it in. Now, what happened with Advani, this is my reading, is that he did this amazing yatra where collected millions of people along the way. It was unprecedented. It turned the BJP's fortunes completely. But when he reached there, my personal belief is he did not expect it to be brought down, because the yatra itself had nothing to do with what the VHP and the RSS were planning. The structure was brought down by the VHP. We had proof of that.
I mean, if it's being
but
wired
And so
and all, then
when it began to happen, my reporters told me that they saw him wringing his hands, crying, and having a breakdown.
No, I was.
He did not
I was,
expect it.
I was
Maybe he was
specifically-
emotional from
Maybe that was
seeing
also
this.
planned.
No,
He was emotional because don't forget he's from Lahore.
Yeah.
In the end, he's also from Lahore. So he thought that he would have this fabulous ending where he'd be sort of lauded कि मैं यहाँ तक लाया हूँ और हम गिराएंगे and go home.
No, I was.
He did not know of that plan. I believe he did not know of the VHP's plan, which was so intricate, so practiced, so carefully done that it could not go wrong.
Before we wrap up, there are two important announcements. One is that please send us feedback at contact@newslaundry.com. We really thrive on your feedback. Also, we have a bunch of other podcasts also that you must check out. So you should definitely check out Daily Dose, which is a daily news capsule that we give you, about 7 to 8 minutes of the news of the day. And also Reporters Without Orders. It's definitely one of our increasingly popular podcasts where young reporters discuss the news of the week. They talk about their experience on the field. It's really nice. So check that out too. And finally, the last announcement, 2 of our NL podcasts have been nominated for the first ever Asia Podcast Awards. These 2 podcasts are Let's Talk About, which has been nominated as the best education podcast, and Awful and Awesome has been nominated as Asia's best podcast. That's amazing news. So please do vote on asiapodcastawards.com. We'll leave a link below this so that you can log on to it very easily. But I'd repeat that. It's asiapodcastawards.com. The last date of voting is October 31st. So please vote for us. Make us win, because if we win, we'll force Abhinandan to throw a party. And maybe we'll throw in a free Hafta also. What do you say, Karthik? Yeah, he agrees. So That's all for this week. Thank you so much for listening in. Thank you so much, our wonderful panel. See you next week.
Sun liya Afrika, Mufat Khoron. Not to brag or anything, but News Laundry Hafta features in the top 50 in the world on SoundCloud in the news and politics category for podcasts. So do subscribe and see what you're missing, because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served. Subscribe, help keep news independent and free. All News Laundry podcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher and any other podcast platform.